Well, welcome back. And joining us now is Tony Arterburn, and he is at the tip of the spear of the news right now because the big news is what is happening to gold and what is happening to the dollar. And we just had Jerome Powell say, "Oh, there's no problem with the dollar." That's what I said at the top of the hour. I said, we're having Tony Arterburn on. He knows a lot more than Jerome Powell, or, the alternative is that Jerome Powell knows a lot more than he's telling you. He's not being honest with anybody. So Goldman Sachs is saying we're looking at the demise of the dollar, and it's just getting started, is what they said. And last time we talked a week ago on Thursday, what was the price of gold? Was it about 4,800, 4,700? What was it? It's hard to remember.
Somewhere around 4,800 and some change, and it's bounced around a little bit, so it's hard to be exact. But yeah, It was just we were nearing 5,000. That was the big milestone. Now that's completely off the table. We're going to talk about $6,000 gold, it appears, and I think we've hit all-time highs every single day, even over the weekend.
That was something that was crazy. I saw it on Monday. I thought, that can't be right. They said 5,100. Is that a projection from one of these banks? It's like, no, that's what it hit on Monday. And I was like, what?
Right.
And then, the next couple of days later, I see it's like up at 5,400, 5,500. Did it get as high as 5,800? I think I saw that somewhere momentarily.
It may be on the futures. As far as spot price, I think we've gone over 55 and then we dropped back down. But we're moving in new territory, David.
Oh,
None of these, even the simulations and the big intel that I follow, they haven't called this. This is something completely different. I would say that it's funny. Jerome Powell reminds me of Baghdad Bob. Remember Saddam's his press secretary, or whatever you would call him, his chief minister of information, whatever it was, and he would say, "They're not here. The Americans aren't here. They're rolling through Baghdad, in real time." And he's like, "We've had no contact." And
it doesn't matter what you're talking about with this administration. They're all Baghdad Bob. I mean, it's whatever the topic is, they give you a Baghdad Bob line, don't they? It's crazy.
Yeah, fiat currency, I think, is a barbarous relic.
Yeah.
In our time, we're seeing John Maynard Keynes had it in reverse.
We could call it a barbarous bubble, I guess, is maybe our own little take on this. We had Tucker Carlson talking to Peter Schiff about Bitcoin, whether it ought to be the new global reserve currency. Of course, Peter Schiff has heaped nothing but scorn on Bitcoin and crypto. There's been this ongoing war. I would say right now is looking pretty good for Peter Schiff's point of view.
Well, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And I think Bitcoin right now is probably the dark horse. It's just out there doing what it does. It's more like a stable coin at this point. I mean, it's still trading at 85,000 a coin, which is insane if you know its history. When I got into Bitcoin, it was $400. That was in 2016. That's when I first saw the usage of Bitcoin ATMs, and then it got me interested. That's the genesis of Wise Wolf. So I've been around a long time in Bitcoin to say it's lagging, but I think all bets are off. Everything's being repriced. Bitcoin will probably go last because you got to remember gold and silver are the old historical money. They're tied to the human experience. It's biblical. It's inside of our tradition. So it's obviously going to go first. And I see a lot of price predictions. I think some of them are completely irresponsible from some of these commentators, especially in my space. I don't like to make price predictions, but I do think that there's something else is happening, David. And I've been running, just like for my own curiosity, running the simulations on what the price of gold would need to be if the major central banks wanted to reprice their currencies in gold. And it looks like it's far north of what it is now. But if you take their gold holdings and you wanted to reprice it for their into the money supply, it's in north of 35, 40,000 an ounce. And I'm not saying that's where we're going, but something is afoot. If you wanted to reprice something, this is how you would do it. And the U.S. for so long, as we've covered this, has been and had an active role, especially the central bank and the Fed, of suppressing the price. So I don't think they can do that anymore. And I think that's clearly showing up in the price of silver, not just gold, but silver is following gold, and gold's being repriced, silver's being repriced, and nothing seems to be a governor on that anymore.
That's right. And, it's kind of interesting because when you look at, what is the financial system going to go to? Well, the Trump administration is definitely pushing toward a stable coin, just like the EU and other places that just want to do CBDC. Their Trump administration is trying to pretend it's something different than CBDC. But the Tether and these stable coins, as so-called stable coins, are really just a relabeled CBDC. It has a kind of private-public partnership aspect to it, a kind of fascism, corruption type of thing, as you would expect from the Trump administration. It also helps them to pretend that it's not the same as CBDC, but it's a way for them and their buddies to make money as well. But we just saw Tether just disappear $180 million something out of several wallets, just froze it, seize it, and freeze it and seize it is what they do, right? And that's a warning to everybody, I think. And as we look at how things are changing, you and I have talked for a long time about the warning about paper gold and paper silver. We don't know that stuff is for real either. We don't know if they've really got the gold or silver that's there. And when push comes to shove, we may find out that they don't have it, in which case the shares that you got in those companies off the Shanghai Gold Exchange would just plummet if confidence disappears. You are not buying a tenth of an ounce of gold or silver. What you're buying is shares in a company that promises that they're going to be accumulating gold and silver. So physical possession, whether you're talking about the so-called stable coins, which are not stable and they're not coins, and they're the way that they can freeze and seize anything that you've got by design. That was something that was in the Genius Act that Trump put through there. So whether you're talking about that or you're talking about paper, gold, or silver, or any kind of tokenized derivative schemes that are coming out of Wall Street, be very careful about that. And the approach that you want to take is with physical gold and physical silver. That's why what you do, Tony, is so important.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the term is counterparty risk, and that used to be a lot more acceptable. And it's funny because the institutions are going first. I always thought it would be the other way around. I thought that the people would start to lose faith in the system and rebel against it from the bottom up. And some of that is happening. I mean, I think it's more widespread than it's ever been in my lifetime, especially since 1971, that people are skeptical of the monetary system. But this has started governmentally across the world. It's an international phenomenon of mistrust and reallocation of funds and resources. And we covered this a few months ago, David. I thought it was big news that they have the storage for gold, physical gold, not only in Shanghai, that they're starting new storage facilities and moving the exchange there. I know JP Morgan is taking their gold desks there, but also in Hong Kong. I thought that was big news. And they're building, massive storage facilities just outside the airport for physical storage. So it's not, the firms that used to control so much of the paper market, and that was just seen, hey, if you wanted a hand in, or do something in gold or silver, and as far as following the price or the spot, this is what you would get into. There's not a lot of risk here. You can just, you don't have to hold the gold or store it anywhere. You just buy in at spot and you can cash out. Of course, they never pay you in gold or silver through any of those funds. They would pay you in fiat if you cashed out, because it's just priced against the spot or whatever those metals were. And of course, there's storage is expensive, all the rest. But I think I started to see a trend about 3 years ago, especially after the sanctions on Russia backfired. There was this big blowback that happened with the ruble rebounding, and they started doing those cross-border payments with not only gold, but petroleum and other things and direct trades with China and India. And I started thinking, this is going to be interesting as the de-dollarization continues. I started watching these big trades going on that were multinational corporations and governments starting to pull, more gold into the system physically and then move it around. The repatriation of gold, I thought it was a big story that didn't get covered the way it should. A lot of these countries.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that from Germany this last week. Yes. It's not the majority position there yet, but you've had a lot of people from several different parties, because they have more than two parties there, just as they do in most places other than the U.S. But anyway, a lot of politicians there are saying, we got to get it back. We can't trust the Federal Reserve. And so if that's their position, they can't trust the Federal Reserve. And I don't trust the Federal Reserve either, but I don't think they're going to disappear Germany's gold. But if that's their position, if Germany is worried about the Federal Reserve's vaults in terms of holding gold, maybe you ought to think twice about putting your money into paper gold and paper silver, hoping that the Chinese have got the actual stuff to back up what they're selling you in their vaults in Shanghai. You might get shanghaied with all this stuff, right?
I think it's inevitable. There's going to be a cascading series of events, I believe, that will further uh, expose the lack of accountability here in the next 12 months. I think something's going to break because these prices expose it. If everything's going chopping sideways or silver's boring the way it's been my entire life, if it's been like, from 1980, it hit this peak at 52. It took 45 years for it to break that, and then once it broke it, it just off to the races. You got to remember, we had these periods like 2011 where silver got close to 50 or trading at 50 and then fell back down because the Fed was able to step in and calm things down. Ben Bernanke was the key figure there. He's like, wait, this isn't going to happen again. We're not going to do more TARP funds. We're not going to do massive QE or bailout things. And it calmed the markets down. Those days are never coming back.
No.
And we're seeing this is the culmination, all those years of being boring, all of those paper trades that were going on, and active suppression, David. I mean, I've seen it in real time in my business. I've seen the suppression through Wall Street, and they can't do it anymore. I just don't think they have the resources or the ability to cover the spread or do anything on selling off major. So I think the race is on for the repricing.
So it was boring, and now we're living in interesting times.
That's right.
Exactly.
It was very boring.
It's kind of interesting. This quote on Kitco, the headline: Powell dismisses gold's rally above 5,300. He says the Fed is not losing credibility. And everybody laughs.
Baghdad Bob moment.
Well, imagine the quote unquote credibility when Trump takes it over, and he is the entire Fed, and he's going to tell everybody what to do. That's when you're going to see credibility flushed out the toilet right there. But when you're talking about interesting times and the radical changes, we got a comment here from North American House Hippo. He says, Mike Shedlott said a couple of years ago that if gold ever hit 10,000 and silver was hundreds of dollars, he said it would never happen. But if it did, you wouldn't want to leave your house. What's your comment about that, Tony?
Well, I think you'd need a little bit higher number. Would we blink right now if gold went to 6,000? And that's the rest of the populace. I mean, obviously we're in a unique niche space of people paying attention, but we're talking about this. The vast majority of people don't really know like the historical context of, silver's, at $118 an ounce or whatever it is today. How insane that is given our timeline.
That's right.
So I think that a lot of things have to catch up. I mean, gold could go to 10,000 in the next year. Would it break the system? Probably not. There's a long way to go in the repricing of all this. And what does that even mean? I mean, really, for you to price things in dollars anymore, do we really know the true extent of the devaluation that's gone on? Are we just so psychologically programmed to give these things value that we continue to do that? And I think that metric that's what's being worked out right now. We're in undiscovered country. We're in new pricing territory that's never happened before because we've never had. I mean, nothing can go back and you can't really historically overlay what we've done in the last 50 plus years with our currency. It's never truly gone on or gotten that big. We never had a fiat currency that was worldwide in everything and then being, de-dollarized it rapidly. So we've never seen that before. So I don't know what pricing strategy. I would say if silver, like some of these yahoos on I see a lot of these commentators, people that want to get clicks, and they'll put on $5,000 silver, whatever. I see those people all the time. If you're at that amount, maybe you can't go outside. At a certain level, it doesn't matter. At a certain level, that repricing in dollars is kind of absurd.
And when you look at the global debt, I mean, that's the point that Ray Dalio was making at Davos. He said, maybe we're not looking at de-dollarization, but we're looking at de-fiatization.
Yes.
And he sees that as something that is, certainly it would de-dollarize things, but it'd be much broader than that because it would include all these other fiat currencies like the euro and all these other national currencies that are out there. When you look at the massive amount of debt that is there and how it just keeps expanding with all that. Got another comment here from Steve Evans. He said, "Can you sell metals? Is it all buy and hold?" He says, "I'm holding. Ask Tony if he isn't buying silver. Health Impact News thinks that many people aren't buying, or many gold and silver dealers aren't buying."
Yeah, I know why they're not, but we're still buying. As a matter of fact, as soon as we're done with the broadcast, I'm going to send out prices. But I'm still buying, and I have to balance between the percentages that I'll buy back for and my risk, and also being professional and making sure people get a good deal. It's a balancing act at this point.
Well, like I said last week, before we saw this explosion this week in the price of metals, I don't know how you do it. I mean, you're already operating in a hyperinflation economy, the type of thing we've always talked about in Argentina or Nazi Germany or whatever, pre-Nazi Germany, where, the price of the commodity is jumping massive amounts during the day, each day. How do you operate in something like that? I don't know.
I have the shop in Missouri and then I have the shop in Texas. And look, my son's here in Texas with me, and I'm broadcasting out of where I stand. We've been out closed for days, by the way, which has given us a little bit of breathing room. And Branson, yesterday when I reopened, I said, "Look, let's just pack Wolfpack packages. We can still sell, but we're not going to buy." And that was the only time in the history of my shop, or since Wise Wolf, I just gave a blanket order. We're not going to buy anything. And because my people needed to work, they've been snowed in for days. So today we're going to be buying again. And, the difficulty is you have to look at every single thing that you buy, or every docket of things. I have to figure out where I'm going to source and where I'm going to sell it. A lot of times this gets, thank goodness, I've been able to pass on stuff like that to Wolfpack people. Any of the Wolfpack members have been getting, like, if you do Constitutional Wolf, you're getting stuff at melt. So like I can still buy 90% US silver, which most dealers and then refiners aren't buying. So I really have no, except for one place, but it takes 3 weeks to get paid, anywhere to take 90% silver. But that doesn't mean that 90% is not a good long-term hold. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the best upside things you can be doing right now. And people, I think, are confusing. They're like, "Well, I held this silver all this time. Why can't I sell now?" Well, you're talking about a bottleneck system where, countless people are trying to do the same thing that you did. You need to just let it calm itself out. And then prices for the percentages that for buying will rise again. But this market is, there's nowhere for me to sell sterling silver. Does that mean sterling silver, like flatware and knives and jewelry and things? Does that mean that is not worth anything? Of course not. It just means that the refiners are overloaded, dealers are overloaded. There's no liquidity right now, but if you give it enough time, it will just sort itself out. And I would say, the rush to sell. If I'm somebody that's held silver a long time, you got a few options, but honestly, I'd want to see where the price goes and let things settle out, because I think that they will, David.
We talked about this report, and I saw somebody sent it to me, and I watched it. It was at a gold and silver show. They set these things up like gun shows, and it's kind of a retail thing. You got a lot of retail sellers who are there, and then you have people come in just like they do at a gun show, and they're going to buy gold and silver and things like that. And this guy went around talking to all the different dealers, and he said, "So what's going on?" They said, "Well, nobody's buying silver. Everybody wants to sell silver." And that was last summer. Everybody wanted to sell it. And they said, yeah, the institutions can't get enough of it, but the retail trade doesn't want to buy any of it. And they're also feeling economic pressure in terms of, I need the money right now. So, it was kind of an interesting thing, especially when you look at this. Some of these people, if these dealers said, I can't buy any more right now, whatever, they're probably regretting that. And the people who sold it last summer are probably regretting it as well. It's amazing, because that was just before it took off like a rocket.
Well, and people thought that 60 was the top and 70 was the top. And I kept saying, I don't, look, I can take your stuff. I don't think this is the top. People would always ask me that. And, it's part of how I stay in business is buying products. And when I stop buying, it really is there's something fundamentally wrong with the system. If I give that order to my shops to stop buying across the board, there's something terribly wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you look at who's buying, that's the tell. And we still have customers, but I get people that send me stuff, David, all the time, and they're like, "Is this how your shop is?" And they'll send me some YouTube video of some dealer somewhere going, "People are lined up around the block and they're buying all the silver I have." And I'm like, "That's not my experience in two different states or the phone. Like that's not how, and my phone rings constantly. I have a full-time person just answering the phone. We try to get to every call.
That guy's other
And
business is Oriental Rugs, I guess.
it's funny. I go, people are always asking me like, "Oh, I guess you're selling a lot of silver." No. And we can move a lot of it. The key factor I think here is that what's helped us is the dollar cost averaging. People over at Wolfpack done a great job with this. If you just let it sit there, we're going to continue to whatever the price is that week.
That's right.
And we just fill that order. I mean, I think
just look at it as a slow accumulation. As you point out, you're averaging this out over time. You don't have to sweat it that you're buying in at one point in time and maybe I got in at the wrong time or something like that. You mentioned Constitutional Wolf. You said getting people getting that at melt. What level is that on a monthly?
it's its own level. It's either 250 or 500, and you can do one time or you can put it on accumulation. And those actually you get collectibles in there because I don't have time to sort through that. But you get collectibles, you get silver dollars. And what I was saying earlier, I was on the phone with, and it's funny because we've never been in this situation before. These prices are so high that I have to reevaluate how I even look at the packages. Like, okay, I used to think, okay, we'll put XX and then I can't. I remember
Save you some shipping costs there, right?
Well, it doesn't. Yeah, it's a much
lighter package.
I have to figure out too. I'm like, you can't just send people one thing. Like I try to give some variety, but it's harder and harder. If you look at a Walking Liberty or Franklin or Kennedy half dollar, I mean, David, that's like $40 a melt right now. Like that, just that half dollar. We used to be able to put that into a lone wolf, and it's over $40 in melt, just for the halves. And so I put a silver dollar yesterday in the Warrior Wolves, which is like 125, and I think we can squeeze out a gold back on top of it. It's just insane. And so it's harder and harder to do what we do, and then finding quality variety to put in the packs, and that's just because of the price.
I got a question for you from somebody left on X for you yesterday. It was from somebody account called Non-Identity. They said, when the U.S. dollar collapses, what happens to the money in people's bank accounts? Like Elon Musk, who says, we're not going to have any money. It's like, so why are you so hell-bent on accumulating $1 trillion net worth? But what happens to his money when the dollar becomes worthless? Everything is still valued in dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and that kind of presupposes that they will still hold dollars in the last days of the dollar, like in the final act of whatever the dollar's role is right now. And I don't think the dollar is going to ultimately collapse like overnight. I don't think that it'll have something like that. I think it'll be a decline that gives people some time to exit. Those people with the golden parachutes, and you got to remember too that they have to play a certain game. They have to hold a certain amount in dollars. I believe this is the way that I think their ticket, their acceptance at the table of whatever billionaires do. I think they have to hold a certain amount of dollars in the system. So I think it probably would be an exit right beforehand. Like if you want to look closely, see where these billionaires and others are going up in this timeline to see where you should go. And I think they'll be placing more into physical assets along in the next 2 to 3 years. See massive flows out of the dollar and into, it could be even real estate or other things, but it'll be commodities.
Yeah.
And something that's even in maybe even too gold backed stable coin, stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's like the dilemma that the central banks have, right? If they don't like holding the dollar, but they can't just dump it all at once, or they make their own holdings worthless. And so it has to be a gradual process to get out of that as well. And I got some more questions here for you. This is from Milutin Milankovic says, should we think about platinum? It seems low, used to be on par with gold.
Yeah, platinum really surprised me. I hadn't paid attention to it in a while. I mean, I own some platinum, and my shop has inventory of platinum just because we bought it from people and just held it. But for the longest time, I would always do, the platinum spot price. I'm like, oh, here it's 8,900. It would always be there, like in the 8,900 to 1,000 range. And then one day I looked up and it's 2,000 and it's more. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It just really surprised me. And I said, is that right? And I'd go back through and recalculate. Um, yeah, platinum is a good play. I don't do enough of it. I hold some of it just because, I mean, long term, you got to remember, any of these metals, if you can physically hold them and buy them at a good price, and you're not just paying some collectible fee or some nonsense, if you can get in there and just hold them long term, you're going to make out okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's real.
It's going to happen.
It's real, and people need to make things out of it. I think platinum, they need that for these catalytic converters. And although I'd be the first to say you don't need a catalytic converter, you actually have to have them in these cars. And so, as a matter of fact, when I cut mine off, took it to a shop, and I was able to sell it because of the platinum that was in it. So, yeah, there's that. Guard Goldsmith, Liberty Conspiracy, says, could Tony discuss the change in importance of the collectible quality of a gold or silver coin versus the metal content during rough economic times?
I love collectible historic coins. It's part of the interest of why I like the business that I'm in. But you have to it's like real estate. And it's like I see a lot of interesting coins, even non-gold and silver coins. And I've bought coins from the Roman Empire at my shops, and very old coins, the Spanish silver dollars, the pieces of 8 and things like that. Pirate money. I literally bought, pirate money over the years. But you have to remember, it's just like anything else. Something is worth what somebody will pay for it. So if you're interested in historic coins or something like that, just make sure you're not going too far into the blue sky of ethereal worth. I have people call me all the time, say, I looked it up online and this quarter is worth $10,000. I'm like, well, maybe it is if you could sell it. I mean, and I just it's a very small pool of people that do collectibles, and you got to know who those people are. And I've been in business for 10 years, and I don't know many people. It's so I did, and I haven't been asked. I know no one calls our phone and says, hey, I'm really looking for this 1879 gold coin, and it's a Carson City or whatever, and I want to pay. Nobody really does that. It doesn't mean it's not out there, but I'd be really careful. I think it's a good time to buy some of the pre 1933 gold. If you know the right people, then you're not paying too much. That's always a good. American pre 1933 gold is always a good play. I like the $5, $10, and $2.50 Indians too. Those are just really iconic looking and beautiful coins. And right now you can still get them for closer to the melt price, which is insane right now.
Well, it's kind of like, I guess, the comic book thing. I had a lot of. I guess I learned how to reading comic books. That's how my mom would keep me busy before I started school. And so I've got a lot of really old comic books, and some of them are supposed to be pretty valuable, but you got to find somebody who's going to pay that for it, right? That's the real issue. That's any kind of collectible, whether you're talking about, and you got to get it graded so somebody, independent party, has certified, what this thing is, the condition it's in. And so you always get into that with collectibles. And I guess my bigger question would be, if society breaks down, how do you evaluate the purity of gold if you're not a dealer? When somebody gives you a piece of gold, you got the capability to do that. But how does an ordinary person evaluate that this isn't a slug that is coated in something if you're trying to exchange with somebody else, right?
Well, I would, you can cheaply get a coin book, off Amazon. That'd be a great place to start. Just the 2026 guide to U.S. coins. That's a good place because you can look, especially if it's not bullion. You can see how much it weighs, what it would be worth in that climate. And then, a few things that you could get a rare earth magnet for a few dollars. And that's easy, like a little rectangle, get a rare earth magnet, make sure it doesn't pull the magnet. That's one way to do it. And then weighing it.
Mm-hmm.
Weight is really important. It's like the diameter and the weight. Now they have some really good fakes now. And if this was a post dollar system and I was bartering, I'd make sure that I stayed in small denominations. I wouldn't take a 1 ounce gold unless I could verify it myself, unless there was some verification process. But if you stuck to the smaller stuff, that's why I think that.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, your audio cut out there for a moment.
Oh, did it? I'm sorry about that.
You were saying
that's
if you
why
stick to the smaller stuff, you're okay in terms of
smaller stuff would be much better. And I do believe too that that's where the pre-1965 U.S. silver would become very valuable because it's hard. I mean, there's very few fakes of those. They do fake them, but you can generally tell about the weight and the patina and like the look of them. So that's where that would come in. Really handy to have a good stock of pre-1965 silver.
That's really important to know. Yeah. I'm looking at this article here. Mike Every of Rabobank is saying exactly the opposite of Jerome Powell. He says the gold move is a vote of no confidence in the entire global financial architecture. Yeah, it's much bigger than just the Federal Reserve. Ray Dalio said the same thing. It is a global situation, and nothing is changing about any of that. It's only going to get worse, and it's going to get worse at an increasing rate, I think, that we're going to see, Tony. So, it's very important for people to understand that. Anything else you want to tell us about what's happening at Wise Wolf Gold this week, besides the snow and got snow and you got rapidly accelerating prices? It's a difficult environment to work in, isn't it?
It was kind of a blessing to have a few days for my crew, especially. They've been, I'm really proud of them. They've been stretched to their limits, to try and balance stuff and do packing and all the rest. So we're going to dip our toe back into the water officially today. We'll see how things go, but just keeping the doors open. I think we've got wonderful customers. We appreciate your audience, and it's gonna balance out, I think, and hold for a little while. Very soon, there'll be some sort of profit taking and other things, but I think we're in a territory where patience will serve you well.
That's right.
Making any sort of I think big moves right now as far as selling or anything. I think if you can afford it, I would.
Because it's not just that's what we've been telling people for the longest time. It's not just one thing. Right? If it's just one thing, that one thing could change very quickly. But it's a whole constellation of multiple things that are coming together all at once and creating this perfect storm for the monetary system. And it is the time that we live in, no doubt about it. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you, Tony. And I know the people who have done business with you are very happy at this point that they've done business with you. And have a portion of your wealth that's going to be diversified into something that has been stable. And it's not that gold is getting unstable or silver is getting unstable when we see the prices changing. That is really, as we've pointed out, that's a reflection of what you're pricing gold and silver in being unstable, whether it's the U.S. dollar or some other currency. And so what we're looking at here when we see these dollar values changing so rapidly, it's kind of like a hyperinflation. You got a loaf of bread, and all of a sudden, you got to have a lot more simoleons to get that bread. It doesn't mean the bread is appreciating in value like that, but it's that the currency is going down, and that's really what we're seeing here. A lot of different things coming together, and again, I only see it getting worse once Trump gets hold of the Federal Reserve. He is an agent of chaos, and people are going to be scared to death about what he's going to do, whether he does anything or not with it. But I expect him to do something with it. So we'll see.
I do too. I think it's a foregone conclusion, and I think the market's already starting to somewhat price that in.
Well, it's always great talking to you. Thank you so much, Tony. And again, you can go to davidknight.gold, and that'll take you to Tony at Wise Wolf Gold, and let him know that you came through us. Thank you, Tony. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, David.
The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at davidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. davidknightshow.com.